Hello viewers, welcome back. Today we are going to discuss about motivation, an important topic in educational psychology. And in this particular session we are going to discuss a few objectives of motivation. And the first objective is to understand the meaning of motivation and also to find out the various functions of motivation and classification of motivation. In addition to this, it is also important to understand various methods of promoting motivation in the classroom setup, and it is a major role to play, especially with the teachers are concerned. Therefore, these two important objectives in mind, we are going to discuss about motivation and various aspects of motivation in the classroom. Motivation is definitely an important prerequisite for any learning. And when we say learning, learning is a continuous process, and learning is applicable in terms of different activities of the individual concerned. Therefore, when you talk about school children or when you talk about college students, they learn many subjects, they learn many aspects in the life, especially in the school environment. And most particularly, it is the classroom environment which is more influential in the individual's life. Therefore, the motivation of the individual is important prerequisite in any learning. It is also said that motivation is the royal road to learning. When we say royal road, it means without motivation, any individual cannot perform a learning activity. So, the basic criteria for learning process is motivation. If you think of absence of motivation, it is very difficult for the individual to learn. If I am not motivated to teach, I may not be able to give you the right output right now. So, it is important that the presence of motivation helps the individual in performing better and learning better. But if there is an absence of motivation, the best of books, the best of libraries or the best of laboratories or the best of teachers would be inefficient or ineffective in any learning process. Therefore, it is important that the teacher should be able to motivate the students. Now, how to motivate students in the classroom? Very important criteria. The entire 45 minutes where the teacher is going to spend with the students, it is important that each and every student should be motivated with what the teacher is teaching. Therefore, the teacher should be able to prepare certain attractive materials, reading materials, audio visual effects, so that the students are motivated to learn the various concepts, so that the teacher is able to create the need for learning among the students. So, here we are going to understand first importantly what exactly we mean by motivation, and motivation is, especially in the Latin term, it is the mover. That means something, an energy or a force that keeps an individual to move. Therefore, an individual keeps moving, that indicates that the individual is able to motivate himself in a tendency, or it is an arousal of the individual. When we talk about motivation, we remember the most important contributor or the pioneer, who is called Abraham Maslow, where he discussed about the hierarchy of needs of the individual. And he is the one who explains motivation in terms of motivation is a constant process, and motivation is ever ending, motivation is fluctuating and complex, and that it is an almost universal characteristic of particularly every organism's state of affairs. Every individual has a constant motivation, say in terms of motivation to learn, motivation to do a task, or motivation to achieve something in life. Therefore, motivation is constant and ever ending. It is important for every individual's life. We can understand that every individual is motivated in some way or the other, according to Maslow. And psychologists have analyzed that motivation or the motivated behavior of an individual can be categorized in three important ways, or the functions of the motivation or the type of behavior is concerned. The most important first factor is motivation, or the motives energize an individual and sustains the behavior. It is important that there is some amount of energy that is involved in people who are motivated, and this energy helps in sustaining a particular amount of behavior in the individual. Let us see how. It is understood that the longer the individual is sustaining the energy, the longer the individual is motivating, it is quite evident that the individual's performance levels are also directed towards achieving that particular motivation. And according to Hebb, he says that the efficiency and adequacy are most influential and they are increased in motivated state of behavior. Therefore, the more amount of energy is invested, the more amount of sustainability of the behavior, it results in efficiency and adequacy of the behavior. The second important criterion is the motives are directed at the same time they are regulating the individual's behavior. Any motivation has a major goal directed behavior. Say for example, if a student is motivated to achieve first or be topper in the class, now what would be his goal directed behavior? It could be in terms of attending the classes regularly, it could be in terms of preparing for the exams, it could be in terms of serious interaction with the teachers, reading books. Therefore, the individual's goal directed behavior is very essential in motivation, and also the individual's behavior should be regulated at the same time. That means the behavior of the individual and the individual's motivation should go hand in hand. Here the behavior of the individual is persistent. As a result, the individual's motives are goal directed, at the same time they are regulated according to the behavior concerned. The third important classification would be behavior is selective. Now, if the individual is having the right goal, it means the individual's behavior is also focused. So, the more amount of focus is required in motivation, similarly the individual's behavior is also selective in nature. So, the role appropriateness, the behavior appropriateness is also considered. Now, we will discuss about how motives are classified. It is important that these motives should be classified according to the primary motives and the secondary motives. When we say primary motives, these are the basic physiological motives which are essential for the individual. Now, these physiological motives are in terms of food, water, sleep, sex, and emotional comfort is also considered to be one of the physiological motive of the individuals. Therefore, the first primary requirement is considered to be the physiological motives which are essential for the organism to perform. After these physiological motives are met, it is the secondary motives or the social motives which are concerned. Now, when we say social motives, the individual is considered to be a social animal. So, in order to sustain, in order to maintain in the society, it is very important that the individual should be having the reciprocal relationship in the society. One needs to be accepted in the society. At the same time, society is also expected that the society and the individual are mutually coherent. Therefore, it is very important that the social motives in terms of cohesiveness, in terms of prestige, in terms of work related achievement, in terms of money, all these factors are considered to be the social motives which helps in the individual to perform better. Therefore, the next important motive could be the personal motive. When we say personal motive, the personal motive is the individual's psychological characteristics that are exhibited, the individual's attitude, the individual's emotions, the individual's personality factors, and the individual's interest are also included under personal motives. There are people who would like to work, who are motivated with their personal motives concerned, not any other reward related, or neither they would like to work in terms of praise or because of the society's requirement. It is the personal motive, it is at the individual satisfaction level that drives them to motivate. Therefore, apart from personal motives, the primary motives and social motives are also equally important, but the personal motives are also considered. In addition to these classification of motives, there are also another two important motivation, that is extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. In extrinsic motivation, people are considered to get motivated through rewards and praises, especially you find it in the work related environment and also in the classroom environment, where children or students would like to perform better because they are given grades. Sometimes the teacher praises in the classroom. So, these are all factors which are related to extrinsic motivation. People perform better because they are rewarded, because they are praised in front of everyone. But in the second classification, that is intrinsic motivation, it is because the individual is feeling satisfied, that is the reason they are motivated. It could be solving a puzzle, or it could be achieving success, or they are happy with the reward, and all these factors have a role to play in the intrinsic motivation. So, not many are related to extrinsic motivation. It is the individual subjective experience, it is the individual's need that helps them to motivate either through extrinsic or intrinsic way. Now, we are going to discuss about motivation in the class, how the teacher is effective enough to motivate a child or motivates the student in the classroom, and this is a very important and challenging role of the teacher. Let us see how best the teacher is able to deal in the classroom with children of around 30 or 40 students in a classroom. And it is very important that every child is unique, and if every child is unique, now how these techniques of motivation are helpful for all the students, and this is definitely a challenging role for the teacher. And students in a classroom, for a teacher it is a constant motivation. The teacher is best able to maintain motivation in the classroom throughout is really a challenging role, as I have told you, but it needs certain methods of motivating them. Now, these are the scientific methods which can help motivate the students. Now, I also put forward that in a class of 30 students, now if one student is motivated and the second one is not motivated, now how the teacher is able to judge this? Now, it is important that the teacher should be able to understand the various socio-economic conditions of the students. Some students are able to get motivated very easily, but at the same time some other students may not be able to get motivated. This is because of the age factor, or this is because of the family background of the student, or this could be because of the socio-economical conditions of the students, which are needed to be considered as one of the criteria of motivation. And also, if a child is from a very rich upper class, the child is able to understand the concept quickly, hence the child is motivated. But in the same class, if one student is from the lower middle class, it will be very difficult for the child to understand the concepts what the teacher is talking about, and this has a difference in motivation of the student. So, here we are going to discuss some important techniques which help the teacher to motivate students in the classroom. The first important method could be use of the principle of pleasure and pain. Now, when you say pleasure and pain, these are the two important criteria which can be used in the classroom. Now, teaching should be pleasurable, teaching should be enjoyable. Now, it is important that the teacher's ability or the teacher's teaching skills should be presented in a most pleasurable manner to the students, so that the students are able to enjoy the class. If the teacher is able to produce a painful environment in the classroom where some students are not able to understand, at the same time the teacher and the students interaction is absent, now it would be very difficult for the student to understand the concepts, and hence this would again lead to a painful experience of the students. Therefore, the principle of pleasure is more essential and influential in the classroom teaching, which can help in motivating the students. In order to provide pleasurable classroom teaching, the teacher should be able to equip with certain teaching skills that could show a pleasant, positive emotional expression of the content. At the same time, Such type of experiences will also motivate the students to learn the concepts. The second important method of classroom motivation could be use of rewards and punishments. How ideal is the teacher is able to show rewards, or is the teacher punishes the students? Now, we are everywhere aware that nowadays corporal punishments are not allowed, and it is very important that the students are not supposed to be abused or physically abused by the teachers. So, it is important that appropriate use of rewards is very important factor in classroom teaching, so that the students are motivated. Therefore, how appropriate the teacher is using the reward method is very influential and also helps in motivation. Say for example, if the student is able to answer to the question asked by the teacher, it is important that the teacher should make a point to praise the student in the classroom. Now, how many teachers does this? It is very important for the teachers to follow this method, so that the student is motivated in the classroom, and this also helps in a continuous learning activity in the students, which is inculcated through reward method. Definitely the punishment method will discourage the students in terms of not acquiring the right knowledge, not able to focus on the content what the teacher is saying. Therefore, punishment is also an important criteria, but is it a physical punishment, or is it a verbal punishment, or what exactly the punishment includes? Is it negative praise? All these are need to be considered for the teacher, and this should also keep in mind that it is the student's psychological point of view is also important, because if the teacher is using more number of punishments, that means the student is trying to make himself aloof from the school, not able to interact with the students, and also there is a possibility or there is a threat of disliking the subject as well as disliking the teacher. So, keeping all these factors in mind, it is very important that the teacher should be able to use the rewards and punishments wisely. The aspiration level of the student is also an important factor to be understood by the teacher. How does a teacher is able to find out that a particular student is aspiring to achieve something, or if a particular student wants to work out more effectively in a particular subject? Therefore, the aspiration level of the students is important criteria for the teacher to understand in order to motivate the student. Therefore, how exactly the student is aspiring in a subject in terms of working, in terms of homeworks, in terms of assignments, in terms of classroom presentations, all these have a major role in the aspiration level of the student, which helps him in motivation. Now, how we understand, or how the teacher is able to understand the aspiration level of the students? It is the intelligence of the student which is very essential to consider, and it is the socio-economic status of the student, which has the family background, which has the financial background of the student is also another important criteria. And apart from that, the parental relations, how the child is having, or what kind of parental relations that the child is having, is also another important criteria for aspiration level of the students. Therefore, the teacher should be able to equip all these individual factors of the student in terms of intelligence, in terms of socio-economic conditions, in terms of the parental relations, and also the support and the encouragement that is expected from the children is also an equally important criteria in understanding aspiration level of the students. It is important that the teacher should provide a platform for all these students in order to equip themselves through attaining and through aspiration levels, where the teacher is the provider, through which the students are able to achieve their goals. Another important technique or method where the teacher is able to motivate the students in the classroom could be use of praise and blame. If a student is praised in a classroom and if the student is happy about it, that means he is a student who loves to be praised and for which he strives to do better in class. Therefore, the student is an important factor in the classroom where the teacher should be focusing on each and every students. Some students take blame in a positive way. Say for example, if a student has got less marks and the teacher asks what could be the reason, or the teacher may demotivate him, but by demotivating there is a threat to the student that he may not come to school again, or he may develop a dislike towards the subject. Therefore, the wise use of blame and praise is also another important criteria. There are students who take praise positively, but they cannot take the blame. At the same time, there are students who can take praise negatively, but they are the one who want to seriously work on their criticisms. So, in order to deal with a mixed group of students, it is very important for the teacher to use praise and blame more wiser way and more individual level. A teacher has a major important role to play in terms of conducting competitions among the students. Therefore, use of competition and cooperation is another important technique which can help the students to be motivated. When we say competition, competition can be of many types. A competition can be conducted between two individuals, or a competition can be conducted between two groups, and sometimes competition within the self in terms of performance of the individual from time to time. Therefore, the teacher should be able to inculcate a sense of competitiveness among the students, which has a major role in motivation. Sometimes there is also the negative effect of competitions. This may result in dislike, this may result in hating one another. So, therefore, it should be very cautiously performed that competition is only meant for certain skill acquisition, but it should not be at the individual level or at a personal level. So, that should be made clear by the teacher himself or herself. In school environment or in classroom environment, there is another important component called cooperation. How many teachers cooperate with the students, or how many class members cooperate with their peer group? And cooperation is very important criteria for motivation as well as learning. In competition, cooperation is also an equally important factor for learning acquisition and also for a healthy competitive environment. Sometimes there is a competition, but there is no cooperation. That indicates that there is a lack of participation skills among the students which are being directed by the teacher. So, it is very important for the teacher to understand that including cooperativeness, it is the competition and cooperativeness which have to be hand in hand, which has a role in active participation of the students. Therefore, the teacher should be able to encourage active participation among all the classroom members. Therefore, this enhances their togetherness, this enhances their cohesiveness, and also there is a motivation among all the members of the classroom. The last important technique that I would like to emphasize here is that knowledge of result, or knowledge of result in terms of feedback from the teacher. Now, how a teacher is going to give a feedback to the student in terms of motivation or in terms of performance. So, how the teacher is able to reciprocate with the student is an important factor. It is not only motivating the students, but it is sometimes important that the teacher is able to give the feedback to the student, whether the student has done well, whether the student has done extremely well, or is there anything that the student have to improve in various aspects of his subject concern, or in terms of his personality related developments. So, it is important that the teacher is the one who should be able to give a feedback to the students in the classroom. Now, how does a teacher can give the feedback? In terms of nodding head, in terms of smiling, in terms of giving positive comments to the students, in terms of evaluating the performance of the students. All these are coming under the knowledge of result, which should be known to the student. The student should also know that the teacher is monitoring him throughout the classroom environment. Apart from classroom, the teacher is also monitoring in terms of his assignments. The teacher is giving a positive note about his performance. So, it is important that the feedback of the teacher is also known to the student, so that the student is further motivated and there is an enhancement of teacher-student relationship. So, viewers, so far we have discussed about motivation, and in which especially in educational psychology, motivation is a very important royal road of learning, because it has a major role in the individual's learning process. Therefore, the various meaning and functions and classification of motivation were discussed, where we talked about various personal motives, social motives, physiological motives, intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. In addition to all these, and also we have discussed about how motivation can be conducted in the classroom by the teacher, which is a challenging role, because when you say classroom, there are number of students, they are unique in nature, but at the same time the teacher has to effectively deal with various behavioral problems of the students. But in addition to this, the various principles which are effective enough in maintaining the motivation of the students. We have talked about use of praise and blame. We have also discussed about rewards and punishments. We have also discussed about many other aspects that talks about the motivation levels of the individual, especially the aspiration level need to be understood by the teacher, for which there are a few techniques. It is important for the teacher that the motivation of the teacher as well as motivation of the student is also equally important in understanding the student as well as the teacher himself, because unless the teacher is able to understand himself and unless the teacher is able to understand the student behaviors and the student climate, the motivation is never taking place. Therefore, the teacher's personal level as well as the teacher's personality, the teacher's motivation more specifically, because unless the teacher is motivated to train the students cannot reciprocate. Therefore, the teacher and the student relationship are needed to be strengthened based on these principles, where the motivation or the actual motivation is taking place.